to pin ourselves. So it's mostly us and a little bit of him.
There we go.
And then we're going
Just let me know when we're, there we go.
as soon as that shows our picture,
All right,
that's the line we're talking about.
I got you. Let me know when we're, there we go. All right.
I mean, that's what Jeremy wants, it's just in the dark.
Do you want light?
Yeah, I'm not
turning one on.
Definitely, we should probably turn. How about off the room?
In the dark.
It makes me look more angelic and you guys more devilish. I'm lighter here. Oh, there's right
There
here.
you go. There.
I you don't know like that.
Does that sound there?
I'm just gonna put your little sign around it. And then we,
Oh my gosh. Because YouTube's back here making sound. There. Sorry about that. All right, ready to rock?
ready to go?
We are ready to go. That's what's going on live.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. This is Thursday, October 15th of 2020. We are at the Windsor Unified School District Special School Board Workshop for board goals and updates for the 2020 and 2021 school year. At this time, I would ask Jen to please do a roll call for us.
President Height,
Here.
Vice President Maud, here.
Well, welcome everybody. This is Thursday, October 15th of 2020. We are at, no, that was me speaking.
So it's a minute delay, right?
A minute delay. We were hearing me speak for the introduction, I think,
Through Bill.
through Bill's.
Yeah.
We'll just say Bill is present via Zoom.
Yeah. Should we have
Because he's watching this stream too, I think.
Okay, so we are 4 in session and 1 at another location. At this time, Vice President Ahmad, would you lead us in a flag salute, please?
Yes,
The flag behind ourselves here.
begin. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I did not receive any public comments this afternoon to speak out to our meeting, so we will move past that. Are there any adjustments to our agenda today? If anybody mentioned? Okay. So we are ready for the main portion of our agenda tonight, which is the report and discussion. Item 2.1 is the workshop for board goals, review, and updates for this 2020-2021 school year. So I'll hand over to Superintendent Decker to lead us through the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, and I have a presentation I'm going to take you through. So this is a process to get to our board goals. We're not just going to attack them directly. I want to get to know you guys a little bit and to make sure everything's kind of aligned. So if you'll play my game, I would very much appreciate it. So can you pull up the presentation? Yeah. So what I've given you in front, it's just created kind of just a note-taking page. If you want to use it, you can. You don't have to use this. I'm not collecting it. I'm not going to grade you. But I like to have something just for you guys to use. And it does follow the presentation. So I just push an enter.
Right, before I jump right with this.
Okay. So I want to determine our values because obviously goals are a reflection of what we value. And you can't, everything in the district can't be our goal. There's a million things we could focus on, but it's got to fit us. So when I ask you, what are your values? You know, I'm really asking you, what would you say of these things? So is perseverance in the face of adversity one of your core values? Is an achievement for all one of your core values? Is honesty one of your core values? Civic engagement? I mean, there's a million different things that you could say are core values, and that's not an exhaustive list. But I'd like to see what we have in common and what's unique to each one of you. So if you could just write down, you know, just take about a minute, just list 3 education-related core values so that we can kind of discuss. And then I'd like us to all agree on kind of what our top 3 are as a group. if you want, sometimes it helps just to have that example piece up there. About 30 seconds. About 10 seconds. See, look, you're doing your work. Good student.
Making me mad.
All right. What do you got? So I'll start to my left, George. What are your core values?
I wrote down excellence. The board should strive for excellence. We should strive for academic achievement for all students and diversity or respect for diversity at the board level throughout the district in terms of our hiring practices. Harrington put on a workshop yesterday, you guys might have seen, it said 88.1% of Sonoma County teachers are white, yet 44% of the students are Latino, and the white population is less, so districts aren't doing a good job in terms of hiring for diversity. We've been pushing it as a board, and equity, I think, strive for equity, that we don't prefer one school over the other, or one parent group over the other. That's it.
Thank you. Just go around the table, Rich. What were yours?
I just said, give each student an avenue to reach their capacity. And then I said, as a board, we need to figure out how to get over, under, around, whatever hurdle is in the way to reach the above.
What do you have?
Right, mine are really similar to both of yours. My first one was excellence, but modeling excellence. I think our whole organization should model excellence in every way. I think we need more good role models in every aspect in kind of the public arena right now, and I just feel like that's an area where we can contribute. Number two is achievement for all. And that kind of goes to the first goal, but just making sure that everyone has a great experience and that they're able to achieve, all our students that we're serving. And then the third one, I kind of had three or like I have an alternative. I have educational equity and or thinking outside the box. I think
Can we
they're
send
both
Bill
different,
this
but they're both important to me.
Can we send Bill this document? Or is Jen still here to do that? Okay, I had the lifelong learning and success for all students. I think that it kind of matches up with some of the other discussions that were there, making sure that students aren't put in a box, that they have unlimited resources and availability to do whatever they think is good for them in the future. Fairness, honesty, and respect at the board level, at the teaching level, at the student level. All of us having a common goal with that. And similar to what George was saying, respect for differences in cultural situations. We're not a one-size-fits-all school district. We have a lot of different groups. I was in the same racial equity seminar you were the other night, and it's eye-opening. I've been a teacher for 28 years, and I learned a lot just that one evening after watching some of that. And I hope to put some of those things into play in my own classroom and here at the board level as well. Bill said that he sent you some stuff, but he probably was doing. This is the document that he's showing on the slides. Jeremy gave this to us. Can we get this to Bill somehow?
Can I just take a quick copy of this one?
I guess so, sure. Yeah.
So Jen's, oh, I have.
Have you guys
I
got
have
one?
Yeah, I have extra. So Bill said that his are engagement for all students, integrity, and innovation. So innovation was one that we had. So if we had to pick three, and only three, you guys had some common stuff. It sounded like, what would your three be? So this is where I'd like you guys to decide what our top three are in terms of core values as a board.
Okay. Oh, as a board, are we determining our values or the district's values?
We're starting, I wanted to know yours,
Or us five?
and now we're talking about you five as a board, because we can't really set goals until we know what we value, right? So I want to know what we value as a unit, because that's what we are. Goals are our unit goals.
I think we all said we want academic achievement for all, or everyone to have the opportunity to achieve or reach their goals, or
Set goals.
I don't know how we put it into words, but
I use the word capacity because there are super bright students
Yeah.
who are capable of certain things. They may not reach those things because of the drive, but they have the capacity. There are other students whose capacity might be lower in some areas, but might be higher in other areas. And so that's why, for me, and I think we're all the same way, that we'd like to, as much as we can, offer as wide a palette available to all the kids. So like, for example, like with the new build program, right? That's going to reach a lot of kids who have not been able to reach a certain capacity that they're capable of. And so we also have to balance that with money of how many things can we offer. Stores that offer 1 million SKUs go bankrupt normally. So anyhow, I like the word capacity as far as, because everyone has different capacities. But if we can find a way to provide the opportunity for them to hit that capacity, that's, and I think we're all pretty creative on figuring out how to get there. But,
So are we saying that we just want to make sure every student has the opportunity to reach their full potential or capacity? Is that what we're trying to say, or no? So I heard achievement for all, and I hear you say capacity. I feel like they're kind of similar.
but achievement is meeting a mark, and a mark. A kid could get an A in calculus, but their capacity might be much higher than that.
Okay.
So, like I know that Stephanie's husband has actually helped kids with even higher level stuff than what the school normally offers, because their capacity was greater to achieve that. And so I don't know exactly how to put that, but some of those things are academic, some of those things are social, some of those things are athletic and extracurricular. So I think when you say capacity, it's, like I might be a B student in English, an A student in math, and whatever. So what is my capacity? And then how do we help that person reach it?
we want to challenge them to succeed at the highest levels.
The highest level of their capacity.
But then we can't determine their capacity because
It's not.
you might look at a kid and say, you're not college material because they're D's and F's, but maybe they are.
Yeah, and then the other thing that I think kind of goes along with that is how quickly do you intervene, right? You like notice that someone is struggling. I think that's the other part of it, is how adept is our district at saying like, hey, we think you might have a capacity in this other way of learning, or we might, you might have potential but your needs aren't being met in one way, so.
Are we saying maximize potential? Is that what we're really saying? Because everybody's got different potentials, and we want to make sure that we maximize their potential. Is that something that would
At
be
least provide the opportunity.
Right. Well, that's part of it.
We can't make them drink the water, but we can provide the trough full.
Okay.
So
Provide opportunities to maximize potential.
Individual.
I think so.
That's a good statement.
I think that's a good one. So,
Or an easy way out is the college and career, say that you want kids to be on graduation, college, and or career ready. That way we have both programs.
and we'll get to that part where we get to more education needs. This is really just trying to figure out what makes us tick, and what we really value. And so, I'm hearing some. I would like to have two more. I think that's a good first one. So provide opportunity to maximize potential.
I think pretty much all of us, to some extent, talked about the respect for differences or for diversity, that kind of an aspect. And that racial equality can connect to that as well, or educational equity can connect to that.
yeah,
We're not a one size fit all.
See, I have a little bit of a, not different, but when we hire people, I want to hire the best person. I don't care if they're white, black, Mexican, male, female. I don't care about those things. I want to know who's the best teacher for our kids. So I understand the concept of trying to get a representation. I completely understand that, hey, when you have a teacher, like Mr. Ramirez, for example, a bunch of years ago, you didn't know him, Hispanic guy, taught math. I mean, that guy was amazing. He would stay late, work. I mean, he just happened to be Hispanic. The way I look at it, he happened to be Hispanic, was an incredibly great teacher and reached a lot of kids. So for me, I know this is kind of a little bit weird, different, or whatever here in California for sure, but I just want to hire the best person. I'm really not looking at what makes them the best person, ethnically or anything like that. So I don't know how to balance those things out.
Well, I think to the point that I think George was trying to make, sometimes that the best teacher is different based on the population that's being taught, right? So I think that's the point we're trying to make, that those students may have better outcomes if the teacher had a similar cultural background or something.
I think the kids identify with, if you're a first generation Spanish speaking student and you have a teacher that had that type of background, you might get motivated, you might identify, you might help you, it might spur you on. But just the fact that you're Latino or African American doesn't make you a great teacher. That's true. But when you look at these pools of applicants, why aren't there more people graduating with teaching credentials? Why aren't there more principals out there? I mean, it's a systemic issue that we have, because we've had superintendents say, well, I'm hiring these people, but that's the applicant pool. That's all that applied. So it's frustrating on the hiring side, because when you hire these teachers or principals or even superintendents, you don't see a lot of people of color. And that's not because they're bad. I mean, maybe they haven't risen to that level or didn't have the opportunity. But I can see the other side though. You just don't hire somebody because they're brown or they're black because you just want to get a person in by that color. You want to hire somebody that's competent.
Yeah, I think another way to look at it too is, are we doing anything that is causing a barrier that we weren't intending? Are we relying on networks of people that are connected to people who already work for us? Like, are we doing things that is perpetuating things that maybe we are unintentional and preventing us from finding the best person? So I think that we can also look at it that way. Like, if the pool of applicants is a certain pool, there's not much you can do. But if other districts are getting a more diverse pool, then we have to look at what is it? Is it that housing costs are too high? Could we do something about that? Is it that, X, Y, Z? I think those are all things we can look at. So I see that as equity.
Could I broaden the scope? Equity is, I think, the important term, and you mentioned something about the build program. If you're talking equity, it doesn't necessarily just have to be racial equity. It's also equity for where our students have interests or whatnot. So I think that equity in general seems like a core value where we want to make sure that we're trying to meet the needs of everybody. It seems like that could be something.
And that's the difficult part with having restricted budget situations. We can't always provide the full funding for music and art and programs like the Build program and all the different cores we have. We'd love to just throw money at everything and make it as best we could, but we're not in that situation. So we have to manage that the best we can. And that's an aspect that we struggle with at the board level.
But just listening to everybody, it feels like we really want to make sure we can offer. We want to meet every single kid's needs. We may not be able to, but that seems like
That's a goal, yeah.
it's a major core value for us. And that's not the case everywhere, but we're trying to meet everybody's needs. So if you think of equity in that way, it could seem like it could work. What do you think? Yeah?
Yeah, it's broad enough to look at different ways.
And we can flesh all these things out later on when we're really doing a deep dive. What our last would be, so really we're talking a lot about kids and really it's opportunities. That seems like a major theme here.
I mean, I guess we're all parents, and we're all either have kids that are in school or just were in school. And so I think we're really parents, and what does a parent want? The parent wants the best thing for their kids. And by extension, 4,000 or 5,000 kids in Windsor, they're all our kids.
Right.
And we're their parents representing their parents. We want the best thing for our Billy and Susie and Juan and whoever. You know, we want the best for them, and whatever their capacity is, we want our school to provide that capacity for their kid to, I'm not gonna put words in George's mouth, but you know, like my dad ended up being a superintendent at school. He initially got out of high school, his degree was in making books, a book binder, okay? It took a few generations for things to change. So, you know, we have to factor that in that, you know, I have kids that I coached that they were working, they're agricultural workers in the field. They came to school here, and actually through Mr. Ramirez's hard work, those kids ended up going to college, got their degrees in chemistry, and now they're not in the field work anymore. Now they're in the lab at the wineries, analyzing the sugars and all the other kind of stuff that I don't know much about in that regard. So it doesn't take long with the right education, but it does sometimes take a little bit of time. So to George's question, why don't we have some teachers that are made up differently than white? Because generationally, we just may not quite be there yet. And to Stephanie's point, might not be able to afford to live here still. I mean, it's getting tough to live here no matter who you are. So, but I think the main thing is that we're kind of extensions of every parent.
Yeah, and I think that's, I mean, we don't have to go to 3. I think that the first 2, we had a good discussion. That's what this is supposed to do, is have a good discussion and get our minds beginning so that we can actually dive into the goals. So I'd like to go on to, I'd like you to look at, well, if you look at, where am I? Oh, on the wrong sheet. So our mission statement and our guiding principles. This is what we currently have. It's on your worksheet. I'm sorry. It's on here. So you'll see mission statement, and then underneath it you see guiding principles. If you could take just 2 minutes to kind of read through this, there's a lot in here. A lot. I was a little overwhelmed when I saw how much was in here, to be honest. But if you'll read through and say, does this represent us, and is it where we want to focus?
I just want to, Bill, did you get a note from Bill on?
Yeah, I haven't got anything new, that's why I was checking.
I'm wondering if it might be better to have him sit on speakerphone.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the
No.
same thing.
We don't have the device out here. Either I can play it through mine, I've got 72%.
Yeah, I got about 50. You got 30 more seconds or so.
All right, the next one.
4 minutes.
We'll see about
Because
that.
this isn't the real work. This is still, we're building.
We love to talk though.
Oh, there will be opportunity, I promise you. Look at the back page. Look at all that stuff. You know, obviously I was preparing for this meeting and I was going through and I was reading the mission statement and our guiding principles, and I went, wow, it's a lot of things, right? These are all great things. It's just, I guess I'm gonna push you and challenge you to where's our focus? What do we want it to be? I can't say one of these things is bad.
Yeah.
But
Are we
does
able
this
to
represent
start
us?
talking now?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to set
So
up.
this, to me, I think this was probably written, I don't know, back maybe around when I was starting high school. That's how I kind of feel. I feel like this is a lot of these values were very core when I was in high school, and the high school was new. We had new facilities. I don't feel like that's really, I mean, they're still fairly new, but it doesn't feel the same way as it did then. And it just, I don't know that this captures exactly what we were talking about. This feels like a lot of information.
And that's why I was going with that core values. Does this really represent our core values?
Well, some of the things are good,
Mm-hmm.
but it is a lot to read. And I don't think we've ever gone over this the time I've been on the board. So maybe it started off small at some point and they kept adding to it.
I think that was a piece of it. We've added one or two things since I've been on it.
Yeah, I mean,
And we've tightened up these bullet points below, but it is a lot.
but it is a lot to read and it should, it's way too much.
If I could, and George, you know this as well as I probably, but we both work in another district, and their mission is, we are a collaborative, culturally rich educational community, where a rigorous and innovative curriculum prepares our students to be successful contributors to our global society, period. One broad sentence instead of 3 or 4 with all the bullet points. I don't know if we want to copy that. It's not for us to do
And they
that.
read it at every board.
And they
meeting.
read it at all the meetings, and that starts their focus to remind them.
Yeah.
Something different than what we do. So not that that's good or bad, but just something to share.
So look, obviously we could also have a workshop on our mission statement and our vision and whatnot, but I think that'd be a reflection of our goals. So really what I want you to look at here is say, right now, do our guiding principles and vision statement align with what we just said were our core values? I think some parts of it do, but this is a really broad stroke.
Yeah. I think some parts do, but we could probably start from scratch easier than trying to edit this down,
Yeah,
is my feeling.
yeah, I have check marks, but it's like half of them. And that's still a lot.
Yeah.
Should we have Bill call in?
I didn't know if we.
I'm fine either way. You want me to text him to call my phone or?
Yeah, let's see, because I just want
I'd
to.
rather just start from the.
Can you hear me from here?
Yeah.
I can hear you guys just fine, other than I'm muffling. I'm not sure what the 3 core values were.
Got it. We only came up with 2.
Okay.
Really to provide every student an opportunity to maximize their potential. And then we kind of just said equity, because equity is general to many different aspects. And we really just want to make sure that all students have a chance to be their most successful. So I think it kind of fit with maximizing potential.
Okay.
We just had 2.
Those seem the same to me. Okay.
They are pretty similar. I guess it just depends on how we read equity. But that was just to get the juices flowing, Bill.
I got it. I agree with, I think it was Stephanie who said she has the nice higher dulcet tone voice of sort of rewriting and starting anew rather than taking the legacy governance document. I mean, maybe we look at the goals in the back end, but rather than rewriting, I would say let's write. So I'm hearing pretty much everything you guys are saying.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I don't think we're here tonight to do that. But
Nope,
something
it's
to
just
look
a
at for the
review,
future.
because look, everything should be aligned, right? Our core values, our mission statement, our vision statement, our board goals, our LCAP, they should all have some alignment, because then we can actually carry out what we're saying we're gonna do. Otherwise, we're constantly battling for the funds of the district. So that's where we get to this. Determine our areas of focus. So I'm sure that you guys are familiar with LCFF, our LCAP, all those different terms. But I want to make sure that we value the LCAP when we're going through and discussing our board goals. There's we have rubrics that we abide by, and we're either in red, orange, yellow, green, or blue. And I'm not sure if you've had workshops to understand all these things, so I'm not planning to do all that tonight.
Extensively.
Yeah, I'm sure you have. So what I want to show you is there are a bunch of different priorities that we have to put in our LCAP, right? And so, you know, progress of English learners towards English proficiency is priority 4, high school graduation rate, so on and so forth. And as we're going through and thinking about our goals, let's also keep our LCAP in mind. That's really all this slide is for. And then when we're looking at possible areas of focus, there can be many. We have equity on there. We have, you know, attendance, board governance, board policy. There's all these different areas of focus that we can make our board goals around. It could be finances. It could be having more classes, more opportunity for kids to take different classes, whatever we want it to be. But I just want to make the point that I'm going to really push you to narrow our focus so that we can really do it, whatever that it is. So if you had to pick somewhere between 3 and 7 areas of focus for us, I've already asked you about core values, but I'm going to go back to this list. If you're looking here, which of these things you're like, yeah, we've got to focus on that. Oh yeah, technology, we have to focus on that. Or school safety, that's very important to me. We've got to focus on that. I'd love for you, and you can, I have this little spot for you on my fun worksheet that I love to create, if you want to, for areas of focus. I only gave you 6 slots because it made it cleaner on the sheet. So you didn't get the 7th one like my PowerPoint. But you can, if you write them down, what are your personal ones? And then I'd like to see if we have any commonality.
So are these things that you think we need to make changes to accomplish, or things in just complete general of what we philosophically believe are the best things for a school district?
It's what you believe we should be focusing on right now in Windsor. Our areas of focus in Windsor. Should it be we talked a lot about finances. Should financial stability be an area of focus for us as a board? Should technology, you know, we're doing a lot of distance learning. Should that be an area of focus? Professional development, should that be an area? Assessment of a form of assessment or data, or, you know, there's lots of different things we can look at. And so I'm just giving you 3 minutes. So now this is really the start of developing some goals. The rest was just warm up. Done. No. Got it.
Yeah, you're smart to limit it to 6 because keep going.
I know it. I'm going to make you guys agree.
That's the hard part.
How about finding the ones that encompass all the other ones?
I know, it's cheating. That's a valedictorian talking right there. Test taking skills. About a minute more. I think this is my wife's because it is super tight on my ears. I think I got the wrong one.
Your ears can be pinched.
Oh man.
And my ears are like a wrestler. Or is it a boxer? Who gets the cauliflowers? The wrestlers on the boxers?
The good wrestlers and the bad boxers.
I never got any, and I always gave it instead of getting it.
Did you wear your headgear all the time?
I did.
See, I did too. And I didn't get cauliflower until I started wrestling Greco.
Got a couple of spots.
Without headgear. Anyway, you know, post-college, never got cauliflower in high school. Junior high, high school, not even in college, because you had to wear headgear.
Oh.
So when the kids don't wear it,
That's when you get it.
Yep.
Must hurt. Get
Yeah,
your,
no.
your ears
You would
going like
think-
that.
Well, dude, there's some kids, they think it's like, oh, a badge of courage, right? And I'm like going, no. If you have to make someone think that you're a wrestler, then you weren't very good.
All right, Bill, I'm going to come to you if you're ready. I'd like to start with you.
I am.
Where would your areas of focus be? 3 to 7.
So I have 7.
Okay.
I was not a valedictorian. And I would say 3 are sort of curricular and student focused. So I'm going to, because I think they include a lot of things, many of which we're doing, and 4 are broader than that, which sort of to me bring in board and larger district goals. So the 3 that I believe are student or curricular focus is closing the achievement gap, which to me encompasses EL development, which encompasses things like social and emotional learning and intervention. The other one is college and career readiness. I like, frankly, career readiness because college to me is a tool and we start to differentiate. But anyway, that readiness after grade 12. And then I added one for arts integration. I have asked for years that we somehow put an arts component in, and I think that helps. The other 4 that I indicated were parent engagement and involvement. I think we are woefully weak on that. We have a core body, but I think that is an area that would be growth. And I think with parent engagement, we would see student achievement improve. I put financial oversight because I think in our current times, we just need to continue that, watch these belt tightenings and also continue to be creative. I put staff professional development, which I think that our teachers and our classified staff will absolutely shine for our students. But it pains me when we have had to cut training days. I think we are cutting off our nose to spite our face. I'd rather, frankly, have a smaller amount of staff, pay them more, and train them more in a staff development function. And the final one was community relations. I think both on some of the things that we talk about with our sister governments, but also reaching out and figuring out ways that our community can help its schools. I think they desperately want to. I think we don't ask them, and I think we don't know what we want to ask them for. And so I think that's a giant untapped resource. So again, my 7 were closing the achievement gap, college and career readiness. I added arts integration, parent engagement, staff professional development, financial oversight, and community relations.
Got it. Thank you, Bill. George, I'll go to you next.
I wrote down equity. I think it's something that we need to focus on in this district. English language development, we need to get our kids that aren't fluent in English to become fluent in English. Closing the achievement gap, making sure that all of our subgroups are achieving. Technology is a big piece because we need to replace technology. We're dependent on technology and it's always changing. So that's something that we need to do. Social emotional was an issue before COVID. Now I think it's even going to be higher once the kids come back because of all the trauma and all the stress that they're dealing with that we don't know about. And my last was college and career readiness because we want kids to graduate with the ability to go to college or career. We want them to be successful after graduation, and we want to prepare them for either or.
Good. Okay, Rich. Yeah.
I put college and career readiness. One, the reason why career readiness I think is so much more important than a lot of us have historically given it for granted is the families that are first generation or second generation here, most likely they're going to have to work their way through college. So if they actually have some sort of skills coming out of high school, so they got high school, they got that, just like my father, they can actually work while they're going to college. And that might be the only way they can get in because there's just not enough grants, there's not enough financial help. And so for me, part of that career readiness is to also help people be college ready, but it might be college a year or 2 after high school. So that's part of that. Anyhow, technology, I think George said it well, and that is that, it's changing really super fast. My grandkids know how to use that iPad better than I do, and they're not even 6 or 7 years old. Anyhow, the third thing I put was parental engagement. I think Bill said it well. The more we get parents involved and get on the same page, that's just a ton of free resources that our district can tap into. that's gonna aid not only the parents' kids, but all the kids that help, that are around them as well. I put, 4, I had the school climate / culture. I think that's important. That's part of why I like, and we're kind of going down that road of where Windsor, we're kind of, Windsor School District, we're Jaguars, we're one big Jaguar family type thing. I think that as we develop that more, that will help, which will also help with the parent engagement. It's just all going to be part of the deal. 5, I put maintenance, facilities, and financials. I think that it's, I'm gonna use the word immoral, I don't know if that's the right word, but to not maintain what we have for the kids that are coming down the pipe. We can't let the things that we have not get taken care of and maintained properly, so that way generations to come have the same advantage or same opportunities as the generations today. So that's that. And then last, I put athletics, extracurricular, arts, and music. I think those they blend in with the school climate culture part. Some people are quarterbacks, some people are tuba players, some people are drum majors, some people are flag people. Whatever the thing is that we can add to our soup, I think that those are very, very important.
Thank you. Okay, Stephanie?
All right, so my first one was financial oversight. I think that's just something we have to focus on, and I actually think we can do a lot with what we have. Like, we actually have, I know it's tight for schools, but I think that we need to think outside the box a little bit more. So I think that we have something that we can work with, and that we can be creative. Number 2 is personnel. Our teachers and our staff are the people that our kids see every day. So I think we really need to think about their professional development, their work satisfaction, the culture they experience on the job. That's all going to directly impact our kids every single day, pretty much, the half of the day that they spend on campus. Equity, we talked about before, but I really see that from like an excellence angle, that we're trying to make sure that each of our kids can succeed in whatever shape or form that is. And then I put college and career readiness, but the way I really see it is ready for life at age 18, because that's pretty much when our students leave us. And that means being socially and emotionally developed to a certain extent. That means having been supportive. That means having been given a certain communication skills and life skills in addition to academic preparation and career preparation. So I see it a little bit more holistic, because I think others do too. Number 5, I put professionalism. I think that goes hand in hand with excellence, which I really care about. I think that how you act as an organization and how everyone acts within an organization affects the culture of that organization. And I think that is an area where we could grow and really see significant gains just from kind of thinking about our culture and even our student experience. I don't just think of that as staff, I think of it as students and how we interact with students too. And then I put as number 6, community relations, which I see as parent engagement also, but kind of broader, the community and parents and businesses. I think we need more contact and more engagement outside of ourselves.
Thank you. Eric?
Okay, well, as I was going through, I put little initials next to all of them, and surprisingly, I have several that are different. I think as I reread my list and what I chose, I kind of geared myself toward our clientele. I think my choices kind of more represent our 5,000 employees or students that we are working for. I didn't intentionally mean to do that. It's just in reviewing them, it kind of feels that way. So I will make it a full house and say college and career readiness.
All right.
I think we're all in tune with that, and I'm not going to need to repeat many of the things that I believe you all said perfectly. I also chose early education. There's lots of studies that show that if a little can read by the 3rd grade, they're going to be much more successful later on. If we can get those 4th, 5th, 6th graders to do their math well, then they're going to be more successful later on. So I think putting a little extra focus on some of those younger areas and also, preschool and such, that a lot of our families aren't able to afford or aren't able to access. Not necessarily Windsor Unified's job to get preschool going, but I think we can make some strides to accomplish some things in that respect as well. Financial oversight, that connects to what Bill and Stephanie had said, because a lot of these other things can't happen if we don't be careful with how we spend our money and allocate our resources. I also put response to intervention, which hadn't been mentioned yet. And I know it's kind of a controversial thing. Santa Rosa Unified went to that more than Santa Rosa City Schools went to that more. But we've explored that and used that to some extent. And the reason I chose that is because if a student doesn't feel comfortable where they are, they feel like they're not getting treated fairly, they don't have a way to avoid the hardships of their family life, and they show those at school instead, they need that extra help and that extra resource to make sure they can be successful when they're at school. If you came to your job every day and you were disgruntled, you wouldn't want to stay at that job. And so we have kids that are coming to school and that are feeling put down and in a bad place every day, and they kind of need that extra support with the intervention. And to connect to that, the social emotional services, I think George said it really perfectly, that this year especially, we don't know how hard it's going to be when kids come back or what they're dealing with now. I've read several reports and studies lately that Child Protective Services cases are down like 75% from normal because kids aren't out and being seen that they've been abused. They're not being reported that there's problems at home because they're always at home and they're not at school to get those things happening. And so, that's a really negative thing to lean toward, but just being evacuated, being in COVID all the time, dealing with the smoke days, dealing with power outages, it disrupts the flow, and the kids can't get that continuity if they don't have some of that social emotional aspect as well. And then my last choice, actually I had financial stability. I think I mentioned that. Yeah, I did. The last one that I had on my list was student engagement, that the students need and want to be at school every day, that they feel valued, that they can trust the staff that's around them. That connects to several other things that are here. But I think that if a student feels comfortable getting fed, is enjoying the extracurriculars that have been mentioned, they want to be a part of that institution. They want to be a part of that, want to be proud of that. And I don't know that we always catch all those students as much as we could. So the student engagement piece, and even more so this year again, because we're not having rallies, we're not having special days other than virtual stuff, and a lot of the kids can't connect to it that way. So feeling a part of something and being proud of where they are and engaging in their curriculum and their activities, I think that's a big, powerful piece for a lot of kids. Because they may not be the big academic, or they may not be the football star, but they find their niche, and kids aren't finding their niche this year. So it's hard.
Okay, well, we had some common themes. It sounded like college and career was mentioned by most everybody. So what I'd really like to have you guys do here is now agree on your top three. I said 7, but really I'd like it to be 3 to 5. I'll give you that extra couple if you really need it. So remember, these are board goals, right? This is us. We're a unit, and we've got to agree on what our focus should be. Your focus will be this is what the district focuses on. So is college and career something that we're going to commit to as one of our goals? And there'll be a lot that comes with that goal, so I won't get into that, but just is that a theme that we want to have?
I think all 5 of us.
Yeah, we all
mentioned, didn't
talked about that.
Yeah.
Everyone.
With the caveat that it's bigger than just college and career
Right.
readiness.
It's not
Yep.
just
And it
Navy, not
encompasses
just Navy or.
Nope,
many
there's gonna
bullet
be-
points.
There will be indicators of success coming next after we establish what our themes will be, and then we can talk about the specifics of what it means.
And we have resources, staff resources to help support this in many ways.
Okay, so we
I
got
think
one.
Stephanie brought up financial, and I think financial probably might be the
Yeah,
bullet point.
3 of us
And then,
mentioned
and then
financial.
underneath that, I'm sorry, I mean, whoever mentioned financial, but underneath financial might be subcategories like, facilities, those kind of things,
You get it, yep.
teacher pay. I think Bill said something about, fewer staff, pay them more. That might go to the attraction issue too, of you know, how can we get certain people to apply up here so that way they can afford it? I mean, so there's a lot of things, but I think maybe financial is that second bullet point kind of thing, maybe?
Yep.
That's what you're looking
It
for.
seems like you guys have agreed, those two seem to really
Stood out quite a bit.
stand out. And then we had some other themes. You had technology was in there. We had parent, civic, kind of community engagement was another one that I heard a lot of.
I'm gonna put a plug in there for the athletic, extracurricular, arts, and band. And the reason why I say that is because truthfully, when you talk to somebody 20 years out of school, they're not going back, man, I remember the day I learned the Pythagorean theorem. No, but they remember the games, playing or watching. They remember being in the band. I remember I was a freshman, we got to go to Disneyland. I mean, you remember those things, that's kind of that culture that brings it in. So I don't know how to.
Flush that out though.
Could we call that the student engagement piece as well?
Do you call that
That is
student
student
engagement?
engagement.
Yeah, not just that it's, you know, other ways that students are engaging in their education and their experience. That's what I was kind of mentioning about when I used that last one.
And is that part of college and career readiness? Because I see it as that you're developing that person, like the things that they're gonna be interested in later, you wanna plant the seed before they leave. But I don't know.
Here's what I would challenge though. Ultimately, what we're determining here is where we're gonna spend our money, right? Because we only have a certain amount of resources. So college and career readiness can be many things. That's offering classes oftentimes that are gonna help you be college and career ready, among other things. With student engagement, that might be different. I don't know if would we spend money in a different way if we're talking about student engagement differently than college and career readiness, or is it under the umbrella? I don't know that answer. That's for you guys.
I think they're kind of different.
I think an easy one, sidestepping this one, would be social emotional. Because as a board for years, we've tried to get counselors at the high school and at the middle school and at Cali. And that was good investment of money. And it's something that we need to continue to do because the mental health of our students is really important. Because as Eric was saying, these kids have a lot of issues at home and we come to school and they're gonna
This
tell
is
their
their safe
teacher, they're
place.
gonna need to see a counselor, and the schools intervene a lot for these kids with the issues. And
we have the Circle Keepers program and all the other, you know.
so it wouldn't make sense for us to invest in social emotional learning and restorative practices, and then now say, oh yeah, we did it for 5 years, we're not gonna do it anymore. I think it's something the board probably should continue.
What we call that school climate and culture. Does that fit into building the culture of a school in general to be a welcoming place? And that benefits arts, athletics, and if you're connected to school, oftentimes you have better social emotional health. And I don't know the answers here. I'm really just trying to spark conversation.
Is there a-
Go ahead.
oh, is there?
Well, like the kind of student engagement, social emotional, school climate, culture, all the extracurricular stuff, those seem like they're all in some sort of a family. I just don't know what that family's called.
I was kind of thinking on it a bit on the lines of academic versus non-academic, but there's gotta be another word for it that's better than.
We can flesh that out. We don't
But
have
it's
to.
kind of
list
like
this.
we have these, you know, these standards that we want them to learn, like they're going to school to learn these certain curriculum or whatnot, but then we also want, there's this whole other side to
Student
developing.
experience. That's what you're
Yeah,
talking about.
yeah, student
The life
experience, but I think it
skills.
encompasses social emotional learning, like are they being taken care of as a person, you know?
Why don't you just call it student experience for now, and then we could flesh out what that really means, because I think we've kind of identified a lot of our indicators already through this conversation. Does the student experience,
And I would put a little other caveat to that. And most of our discussion right now is kind of trended toward high school kids,
that's true.
but we've served a lot more than just the 9th to 12th graders. So if you think about what that 3rd grader needs, or what that 5th grader at Cali needs, or the kindergarten TK kid who hasn't been to school yet, what their experience is like. We've got to put a little focus there as well.
You know, Eric, if I could just throw this concept out there for everybody, because I agree with what you're saying. And I've referred to it before. When we graduate the kids from high school, the high school is our crescendo. That's what we're building up to. But we can't have for me, we can't have a great high school marching band if we don't have a really robust junior high and elementary music program. So to your point, this is what we're trying to get our kids to leave as, but we need to be investing all the way through. Does that mean that we actually put more resources into first, second, third graders for them to develop their reading and math at an early age? And then we don't need quite so much effort as they get older because they've already developed those skills at an earlier age. Sometimes people won't put so much here and they put more here, but actually if you invest it here, you might need 3 teachers here instead of 6 and have the 3 or 4 down at this level.
I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't, but anyhow, so that's all I'm saying is that, yes, I think a lot of this is geared towards the high school because this is what we want our kids to leave as.
Mhm.
But where we put our resources, as Jeremy was saying, we have to invest in different places and in different ways to prepare for all that stuff.
And we can't just wait until they're in high school to do the social emotional aspect or to do all the other little pieces that we're talking about. It needs to happen all the way through. I just wanted to remind everybody, because I do the same thing. I work at a high school. I tend to think about the high school, and then I realize some of those things could have been solved a long time ago if we had these other programs when they're little or when they're developing. So.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about this from where we are right now, like, and what our kids are experiencing right now, because it's almost like we're just not even really thinking about this year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because it's just such an anomaly, like,
We hope it is.
I hope,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's interesting.
So I have a thought. I heard you say student experience, Jeremy.
Yeah.
And I get that that's like stuff happening. I frankly like student engagement a little better because that has the commitment towards a connection. And I think we've siloed with some of these things. For example, to George's point, I would put social and emotional learning and those connections under student engagement. I would put those experiences beyond whatever it is for standards and academics, activities, etc., under student engagement. I would put school climate and culture under student engagement, and that flows in a continuum, it seems to me, from K all the way to 12. And then we can, because it seems the outcome of that broader silo of student engagement is to keep the kids wanting to come, feeling safe, being engaged at school, leading to success for whatever that means to them, right? To that first core value that you all shared about students to maximize their potential. To me, they've got to be engaged. And I think in the past, we've sort of said, all right, we have SEL stuff in our LCAP. Well, that never really, I mean, it's good. It's a great investment. It seems to have borne fruit. But it always struck me that was as a linkage to have the kid do well. And I think if we maybe more broadly put an umbrella, if we have something like financial oversight, college and career readiness on the output, that's our production at the end. Student engagement sort of builds to say, how are we keeping kids coming to school and doing the best they can? And that may have 5-10 prongs underneath it. But I think it would help us get away from some of these silos.
I think it fits. I really do.
I do. I actually like that engagement part and the way Bill just described it. It kind of does pull it all in.
We have 3 right now, 3 priorities.
I think if we go more, we start thinning it.
Can we work with those?
We absolutely can. We can do as many or as few as you
What
want.
about professional development for teachers?
I think we need to have a staff aspect as well.
And then the offshoot of that would be technology, because they need to learn how to do Seesaw, Blooms, Aries, all these different applications that they're doing now in the school district. And the kids also have to learn also, they're learning on the fly with distance learning, but also with technology. It'd be a mistake if we didn't, as a board, focus some money there or something, because as those iPads get older and those computers get older, you're gonna have to replace them. And if we don't set aside money for that, you're gonna be in a hole. Just like for textbooks, when we set aside money for textbooks, we should always set aside money for technology, because
If we didn't get
That's
this
the bread and
COVID
butter.
money, we wouldn't have been anywhere near 1-to-1 for a very long time.
so I think just throwing something, professional development and tying technology or something.
Yeah, I'd like to see at least one more, maybe 2 more. And I don't want to step on your toes, but something that deals more with the staff and, not just the teachers, but all the staff in the district. And then we had quite a few mentions of parent involvement and community resources and relations. So something that deals with staff more and something that deals with community more.
Good idea.
That'll give us 5.
Okay.
I don't know if we want to continue, maybe that's too many, but I think it touches all the bases.
I like that community engagement as Stephanie defined it, putting parent engagement in there, because that is a externally focused piece. It takes us beyond our 5,000 clients and our 500 staff. And I think having whatever that means, but broader to be not just the parents, but also the broader community and partnerships or whatever. So that there's at least one of these that is externally facing. I'm already personnel. I get what you're saying about technology, George, and that might be a thread that runs through all these things. But I think I like sort of that somebody mentioned personnel. I didn't realize when I saw professional development up on the list, there's personnel, which I think is broader. It's like it's like talent management for us, or something like that. That's a little kitschy, but
We can connect lots of things to personnel.
Yeah.
Staff development could be connected there, the communication, the professionalism, a lot of these other areas can tie into that without being their own entity.
Yeah, so I think technology is really important, but I would put it actually under college and career readiness, because that's the core of how kids are being taught right now, like the one-to-one, that's literally.
Yeah, I don't know where you put it, I just think it's important.
Yeah, no, I think,
Yeah.
I might put it there.
Yeah.
I agree with Bill's agreement with me about community relations.
You agree with Bill's agreement with you?
Yeah.
With your
So
agreement.
I think.
nothing like plagiarism. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with having an outward facing, but that depends on what other people think. And then, the last piece, I had chosen personnel because it was a little broader, and I think professional development is important, but sometimes I hear a lot of pushback from teachers about professional development that they're not necessarily needing, or that
It's not all
they
authentic, yeah.
they might want some other type of benefit or something, who knows what it is, aside from that. And I think we need to look at the bigger picture, but I do think that is necessary.
But if you don't offer it, then it's like, well, the district doesn't care.
Right.
And then if you offer it, then sometimes teachers like, well, it wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
So it's hard to please, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
So where are we at here? I'm not sure are we gonna say one of them is parent and community engagement?
I think we just leave it at personnel and at community. We can tie lots of different things to that. 2 different items to make 5.
You go with that? Yeah?
I like community relations, some
Community relations, can we get behind community relations?
in the broad Ahmadian sense.
Okay, so, my next part of this is to really set our goals. So goals should be strategic, right? So we want some sort of result. So the goal should build towards whatever that result is going to be. Obviously aligned to working within what we're already doing or what we want to do. So our LCAP, our board policies, whatever we've really focused on. There are things that we're doing well. We don't want to forget about those because we're going to have to make sure we continue to fund them. And then one thing I'm going to challenge you, which is difficult, is they need to be measurable or quantifiable. So whatever that goal is, it can't be this broad stroke.
SMART goal.
Yeah, and I'm going to go through that SMART goal. And I always, I'm an ex-science teacher. Okay, so I got to throw in a little bit of science here. Like the only difference between a laser and a light bulb is where the photons are going. Right? With a laser, you focus them all in one direction and you can cut through steel. The light bulb, they're all over the place. They're scattered, so they're not as strong. So if we can focus our goals, really truly focus them, then we can do a lot more with them. So another part of this is I had you read our guiding principles and our mission statement. Do any of you remember what you read?
Not clearly.
Probably not some of it, right?
Yeah.
But not fully.
Not going to quote it in the line at Safeway or Oliver's, right?
We have no elevator speech,
Yeah.
right? We don't have, because we use our dressed up words often. So we want to make sure we reduce these goals into language and terms that are really easy to understand by everybody, so that people really know what we're doing. Because if people know, if you give them the target, they're going to hit it most of the time. We've got to make it understandable. So let's avoid using, our adjectives. Let's say the district will coordinate a uniform curriculum between middle school and high school, as opposed to saying to have the best curriculum in the state for middle school and high school. Let's say what we're going to do. Okay, that's our goal. So I want to prioritize these things. So when we're really looking at our finances, where our focus is, yeah, hey, we got to prioritize goals. Sometimes you got to just read that last tweet or whatever that is. So what do we really want to be our priority? Whatever that is, we should take these 5 things that we just agreed upon. Say this is number 1. It's got to be because of where we're at currently or where we want to go. So I'm going to ask you to do that. If you could, would you please, and I don't think it's going to take you 3 minutes. I gave you too much time on this, but would you prioritize these things? So is college and career number 1 for you? Or is it number 5? Is we just said financial oversight, stability, whatever it's going to be. Is that number 1? As a board or as an individual, what's your number 1 priority?
I mean, I personally think that if we're sticking to a budget, financial oversight has to be our number 1 priority, but maybe that's just how my mind thinks. Like, because at the end of the day, we don't want to just not certify our budget. Like, that's not the type of board we are. So we will always comply with it. So we should, I don't know, that's my thinking.
And I would connect to that saying, making it a focus really emphasizes that we are gonna work at it and try to improve it and try to get outside resources for it and things like that. Because none of these other things can happen well if we're broke.
Yeah.
You know?
Fair enough. Would you guys, George, Rich, Bill, would you guys agree that that should be our number 1 priority?
Financial, yes.
Yes.
Okay, what would you say is next?
Student engagement.
What was that?
Oh, I'm sorry, we have college and career readiness, financial, student engagement, personnel, and community relations.
So
I nominate student engagement.
I was thinking the same.
Anybody opposed?
no, I was
Right.
just gonna say student engagement and college and career readiness seem like a
Yeah.
tie in what we were talking about. So I could see either.
Should I throw college and career for number 3?
Yeah.
Seems like it is, right? All right, what's number 4?
I would say
Personnel, maybe?
personnel, I
Community
agree.
relations.
Personnel and then community relations. It seems like that's where our conversation took us. We all get behind that?
Yep.
Yep, okay. Just remember, we're gonna create a document that's gonna have these things in order. They're gonna be prioritized for people to see, so they'll know our values. Okay, so now the fun part.
I don't know if I'd go that far though, that we're gonna prioritize and say, we have to do this one first, we have to do that.
No,
I think they all have a strong value to
Yes.
them. We spent a lot of time narrowing down from a list of 40
Yes,
to a
yes,
list
yes.
of 5.
Yeah, we never put, in the old
I
days,
wouldn't put numbers on them or.
we never
ranges
put
on
up by
them.
numbers.
Okay.
We had them by vowels in the old days.
Got
Because
it?
We could
district
never
goal.
say this goal or this goal is stronger than the other one. So we never put them by number.
Okay,
I mean, not to say that you can't do it now, but
we can change that.
It's a different leadership style you're bringing, but I
Not at
have a
all.
hesitancy to say that one's more important than the other because these all have many facets that come into it.
And then-
Spokes of a wheel, you could say. You know?
and then will the staff feel like they're left out, that they're the 4th goal?
Sure,
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
And then the community like, well, why are we last?
right.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the
Like, we can't
analogy.
talk to you until we finish
I'm
four.
a pie chart.
We've got, Windsor unified in the middle, we've got 5 different directions coming off, radial symmetry for your science brain.
There it is, I like it.
I've got a biology
I
degree.
like
also.
it, jellyfish.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that.
So we never put numbers on them.
You could make a great pie chart out of it.
I
Graphic
drew a
organizer.
picture for myself.
Graphic organizer.
Okay, so then, here's my next challenge. So, SMART goals. How many of you are familiar with SMART goals? I'm sure George and Eric are, right? And Stephanie. So, SMART goals, and Bill, that's fantastic. So, they've got to be specific, right? Well-defined. Anybody should be able to understand these things. They got to be measurable. And that's what when I looked at our mission statement and our guiding principles, there was just nothing measurable that I could find. So how do we know we're doing a good job? We got to agree upon that's what we're doing today. And they've got to be realistic. So let's not say that 100% of our students are going to be X, because that's probably not realistic. So let's really think about what's realistic for a district. and we have to assign a time base. So a goal that is going to take 20 years to accomplish may not be the goal that we should have articulated, right? It should be something that we could pull off in a reasonable amount of time. So it's like the old analogy about trying to lose weight. Well, what's your plan? I'm going to lose weight. Well, if you say you have a certain number, then you constantly try to get to that number, right? You set a real goal. It's specific, it's measurable, it's realistic, and it's time-based. I want to lose 20 pounds by X date. So I'm going to lose weight, you know what happens? You just quit midway through. You don't have a goal. So,
You have a goal, but there's like a box of cookies.
right?
You eat them all.
Berry crackers.
I know, I'm looking at that box over there, I'm like, get behind me, Satan, get away.
Yeah, I saw the cookies there for the crackers.
And like open the cookies, that's how bad I am.
Well, how many shiny new balls are there on the shelf for education, right? There's so many things that can distract us from what we know we want to focus on. And that's really what I'm getting at. It's the cookies. And I'm the worst at it. I'm like, oh yeah, that seems like a great thing to do. Let's shift course and do that. Well, this grounds me and says, no, that's not what we're focused on right now.
You look at all the different apps that are out there for
Oh,
distance learning, we
goodness.
could talk about them for hours, and I use about 3 of them.
Right?
You know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, there's too many.
too much to deal with sometimes.
So now here's where we've done a lot of conversation, had a lot of conversation already. So for instance, goal 1 is is financial, right? So what are our indicators of success going to be? And I'll give you some examples. A positive certification, right, is an indicator of success. No longer having a structural deficit would be an indicator of success. And we could assign when we were trying to accomplish that. Increased compensation or something that would be something in that realm would be an indicator of success. So or being able to provide the resources that we deem necessary, like technology, or being one-to-one. All of those are indicators of success that we can assign a time value to. So with goal 1, financial, what would our indicators of success be? And I just pick a couple. I mean, we can really flesh this thing out, but just pick a few for you. And then for student engagement, what are our indicators of success? We could give surveys to students, right? They could say, they have surveys about school connectedness. California Healthy Kids Survey does. They do a lot with school connectedness. Is that something that we want to focus on? So that's what I'm asking you to do now. We've had a lot of this conversation, and now let's really identify how we're gonna deem ourselves successful. So I don't know, do you want to do this individually or you just want to talk it through?
Let's talk it through.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's easier because it's just so much. So let's start with financial.
We already said it, positive
Yeah, I think
certification.
you gave the top 2 or 3 already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think eliminating the structural deficit would be my,
Having a long-term plan where we're not upside down, right?
and then I liked how you said having enough funding to cover the things that are our priorities. I don't know how we would measure that exactly, but there's probably a way to do it.
Probably is.
What about the healthcare? That's always been an issue, part of the structural deficit.
Special ed's a big piece of that. There's lots of things that connect to it, obviously.
Yeah, health benefits are,
The problem with special ed is, you try to keep the kids in-house, but you might not be able to. You might have to send them to another public school.
One big hit can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah. So, I mean,
I feel like we do a lot.
I think they do that on
We're
special ed,
showing that
but
now.
every district, you have to spend the money, even though you don't, I mean, you have to, you don't have a choice.
It's not an option for us.
We want to talk about resources, because I know it's usually very important for us to be able to provide our students and teachers the resources they need to be able to do their job. I don't know what those resources are necessarily, but is that something that is a focus for us? And if it's not, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Well, George mentioned healthcare, we talked about technology, we talked about facilities, all those things connect directly to financial.
Yeah.
And they, student engagement, if we have athletics and band and art and all the extra programs, those are funded somehow or another. So they all kind of connect again around the circle.
Yeah.
But again, how do you measure all those? Is there a priority for one or the other? We try to do it all and then you get spread too thin.
Yeah, right. So do we want to focus on technology under?
I would say, well, I'm leaving, but I would say with technology, develop a plan, some sort of plan.
Replacement
Next
cycle.
5 years or 3-year plan. I think we had a plan at
I
one
think
point,
we have
Yeah.
one that
Or-
is probably,
or dust it off, or review the plan. I mean, that's an easy goal to achieve.
You can have a technology replacement
I
plan.
think with that technology though, I think we need to get our two unions to get involved in that, and then also to buy off on it. Because that is, we're spending resources.
Yep.
And I think we need to get them to say, yeah, we're, as just a number, let's just say, every year we are gonna put
Oh, money set aside.
Right.
$200,000 into a technology fund or something for the whatever it is, right? I think we need to get those bargaining units to be part of that group.
We're not hiding money, we're not putting away
Right.
an nest egg.
Which is also, when we talk about financial, I think we need to get those units also in on that earlier and say, hey, guys, this is, 80-90% of our dollars go there.
Mhm.
So here's our goals. You guys buy in on those goals. If you do, now how are you gonna help us buy in on how we're gonna do this?
So
If that makes sense.
it does make sense. So I think what we're talking about, do we have a deferred maintenance? Do we contribute to deferred maintenance?
We used to.
We used to. We've been using some bond money.
So I think it's all of this. It's classroom furniture, right? Usually you have some furniture replacement, usually have a technology replacement fund, deferred
Textbooks.
maintenance fund, textbook, like, all of these things usually have planned funds that we put aside every year so that when it comes time, we're ready. So it sounds like the goal is to be able to get to that point. Now, how we get there, that's where we do the work with our unions, our staff. But I think you're saying to have,
I think we've set aside money for different things over the years, but then we've.
When we had a windfall.
So you guys have to be planning for 4 or 5 years out.
Right.
Even though you're struggling to make it through this year.
Right, and for example, one of the prime things we're gonna have to deal with in several years is, we got, 3,000 new devices this year or something like that?
yeah,
They're good for about 5 years.
yeah, you like to phase those.
And you wanna
in.
phase those in and out, but if we wait 5 years and don't put a little bit aside each year, and we have to again buy 3,000 new ones or upgrade those that we have, it's not gonna be possible. $500,000 doesn't do that. And that's all we've had in the past to cover years of replacement is $500,000.
So maybe that's just, it's part of our structural deficit, right? I mean, that's a part of the conversation, but I think we're saying we want to be able to, and we can not work, we don't have to wordsmith this now, but our,
But to your point, you said earlier, say, hey, we have a structural deficit. When are we gonna get rid of that, right? Again, let's get the bargaining unit and say, do we want to have structural deficits? Do we not? I think they would not want to, just like us. So then help us, so what year, what amount, when are we going to eliminate that?
Mhm.
So it's kind of like people who are conservationists. Oh, no, we got to save that for the future. I agree. When in the future? So when in the future can I take that piece of property and when can I plant grapes on it or do whatever?
Mhm.
Or is it really just a perpetual wish list? So I think those are the things that, I mean, you're new, you're just getting to work with them and stuff, but I think that this is where it's bigger than us, where we need to bring them in and say, hey, we are spending more than we're bringing in. We can't do that forever. So when do you guys all agree that we should do this
Mhm.
or whatever, and bring them in? I think that's how, I think we'll be more successful that way.
So from a paradigm shift, the opportunity to do that, it seems to me, Jeremy, to Rich's point, we're going to have a first interim, which is going to give us a snapshot now and a rolling multi-year projection for 3 years. And some contracting of our structural deficit, I'd be very interested to have you start to have that conversation with them. On that budget are the assigned reserves, some of the things we've talked about for technology and other infrastructure investments. Those used to be populated, now they're less populated, right? Because we're structurally deficit. So I think there are two pieces of it. What immediately you can do in working with our labor groups and your other partners and stakeholders between now and when we see first interim in December. And what I'd like to see is, hey, here are some placeholder, and they may be very small numbers or zeros at this point, but they have these topics of technology and other infrastructure investments that you've mentioned that we have down there in the bottom related to reserves, and then start to figure out, is this a 2-year, a 4-year, a 6-year structural deficit journey? I think it's a multi-year journey, but it's gonna require, with 80% or plus of our overall compensation costs related to the people who work in our district, it's also, right sizing what the amount of employees compared to the amount of compensation that they're going to have. That's the elephant in the room. And having that conversation, looking at a multi-year process, to me, would be a valuable way to do it.
I think really what we're saying, we want to focus on having adequate reserves. How we get there is the work. But it seemed like a goal of the board to make sure that we have the reserves necessary to really, I don't know what the right term is here, to run our district effectively.
Well, but Jeremy, I think we need to define what that is. What are those reserves and how much is it? We're deficit spending now and have been for years, only because those who came before us, and George, you're the legacy of that, a lot of money was banked away, right? We'd be in a horrible shitstorm if we didn't have that, all right? So I think we need to have adequate reserves. We need to do some work with our partners to say, for what purposes, to what end? And some of that is a general reserve, and I think some of it also can be a designated assigned reserve. But I'm not comfortable saying we need to have reserves of 5% or 7%.
No.
We may, but I'd like to have that half of those reserves are for designated purposes, right? And maybe they're rolling purposes.
Especially not knowing what the economy is going to be doing and how we'll be funded in the next 2 or 3 years based on what's happening now.
Yeah.
It's going to be much different than it has in the past 5 years.
I really like the specific reserves and really tying that. I mean, we could probably even go through the rest of our goals and then tie back to what we
I'm
decided
sure we could.
our specific.
But the reserves, the reason we did that 5% reserve is because Fake Mac came in and almost took over the district, so we barely pulled out of there. When we pulled out, we said we wanted a 5% reserve, and then we just told the unions that's what we're doing, and we're sucking it only away. But now we're spending that reserve to get through this year and next year. We're gonna have to say, we're gonna have a reserve of a certain amount.
Right.
We need to make cuts, because if you don't make those cuts that nobody wants to make, you're deficit spending. And boards don't like making cuts. You make a cut for a year or two and then you get away from it. But it looks like here, you're gonna have to be making cuts every year for a few years until you get healthy.
Well, but we also, we have declining enrollment.
Yeah.
So we do need
That's our
to,
biggest problem. We're spending the same and we're getting less income.
Yeah. You
right,
have to restructure the staff or
and
figure
do,
out how to save some money and make some cuts.
We did quite a bit of that with Windsor Creek.
just like you do at home,
Yeah.
just like you do in
That was
business.
a big deal right there. We had a lot of turnover with that.
Where
a lot
would
of
we
change.
be had that school still remained open?
Yeah, we'd be having Fitback come back to see us again.
So one aspect of financials that we didn't talk about, I know we only have 10 minutes to do all of these, which I think we've blown through,
That's all right.
but,
This is the important one.
but we haven't talked about revenue generation, and I think that's the other side of it. I mean, I'm really for thinking outside of the box and how we potentially generate revenue, so that's another,
Maybe you can put that underneath financial.
So do we want to say, because wordsmithing is always hard, but I know that there's a theme of reserve, some aspect of this. Reserve or special funds. kind of
Forward
thing.
thinking, yeah.
yeah.
So I'm just gonna put in quotation marks, and then I can work on trying to wordsmith everything I heard here later on. But then do we want to have a separate thing that has to do with what you just said, Stephanie? Because I know I've actually had conversations with a number of you guys about, we're talking with the town, where we're looking at different ways that we can, benefit ourselves in some creative way.
Yeah, I think a category simply of new revenue, right? We talk about, we got to cut and we're slaves to the state and they give us some money or they defer it or whatnot. We've seen occasions where we get a grant or we get an infusion. Sometimes they're smaller, sometimes they're bigger. Out of the blue, we got $1.7 million from the state for arts stuff. We never thought we were going to get that money. And then we were struggling to try and spend it. So I think reducing the structural deficit, creating designated reserves, and I think 5%, or frankly, George, I think more than 5% as a standing reserve is prudent. That'll get resistance from our compensated staff because that's money that doesn't go towards raises. But I think we've seen the wisdom of doing that. And then I think adding to the conversations, always having when we talk financials is, cost, budget, and also creative new revenue, right? How we're pouring new stuff into our bucket.
All right, I think I have enough from this conversation to craft some things that I can come back to you with. So I did add new revenue, because I think that is what we're talking about. How can we figure out a way? That could be increasing enrollment, that could be
Money
making
in, money
outside
out,
box,
right?
that could be writing grants, it could be a lot of things.
Cascade.
So,
On the revenue part,
yes, sir.
just as a parking lot item, we had talked about the town doing Wi-Fi. I think that was here,
Yep.
where they could do Wi-Fi. We don't have to get the hotspots anymore, and all of our kids have internet.
Yes, sir.
So that would be revenue saving for us. And also with the computers, if we could partner with Apple or one of these big shot companies, and they could sponsor us, then we could get computers and stuff. We could give them advertisement, and that way you cut down on some of the computer costs. But I know there's a lot of legwork to do those two things.
Yep.
But if you did them, it would save some money.
Or having a grant writer on staff and things like that.
Like we're Apple district or we're a Cisco district or whatever.
Yeah.
They have tons of money to give out. I don't know how you get it, but
Find a way.
You can't get it if you don't ask. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna take us to goal 2. So student engagement. This was there's a lot of conversation around here. So what are our indicators of success with student engagement?
I feel like there's a lot of discussion about social emotional
I do
learning,
too.
and I think that a lot of it is about health and well-being, but kind of mental health and well-being. So I would almost say the goal is you don't see a lot of negative outcomes. You don't see, like you would see lower rates of depression, lower rates of more severe things potentially, like,
Suspension rates too. Things like
Suspension.
attendance rate at school.
right. And then even more like crises type situations, you wouldn't see that. So
Enrollment in extra classes, arts and, electives and things like that. What's the benefit from those?
and maybe you could look at the numbers of students that they've seen, because over the years we've asked social emotional counseling, and then we're told that a lot of kids were saved by this program. They didn't kill themselves, they
Right.
didn't harm themselves. We're not gonna get that data, but we could get the data that Counselor A saw
Drugs and alcohol.
400 kids and referred 200 to an alcohol program or
Sure.
drug rehab. Some better statistic, because we know that it's working, but we don't have any data to show.
I'm gonna push us towards school connectedness, because you guys have talked so much about a similar thing, and if you know the California Healthy Kids Survey, there's a whole
Yeah.
section on it.
Yep.
And I think it speaks to this
Yeah.
very strongly. If our kids feel connected to school, then they're less likely to try to commit suicide. I'm just,
I agree.
I would like to survey our kids in a way where they feel engaged by the survey. Like I would want to put some resources into the survey. Maybe we use that survey, is that what you're saying? Or-
I actually don't know if we do.
It can be given every year. We do it every other year
We
here.
do, we have done. it.
Lisa's worked with
Okay.
7th, 9th, and 11th grade.
I mean, if it's really our number 2 goal and our first kind of substantive goal, like for school, I would say maybe even do it twice a year. If that's really our goal, is to kind of know how are you feeling
Could
with
be before
school?
and after.
The state does it once a year. Some schools 1 year, some schools another year. You can choose to do
But
both, but you gotta pay
different
for that.
Yeah,
And there are other surveys, other outreach groups that can help with other surveys, different.
yeah. Or I'm even thinking of a survey that was a little bit more informal that we kind of modeled off of that and just administered. I mean, you can do like a Google form survey.
Goodness, I'm actually frustrated myself, because we did something in Windsor that I just can't remember. I think it was a Rooster Fellowship. And there was a survey that goes along with that has to do with what we're talking about.
Uh-huh.
So I'll have to do some more.
And I think they do the survey like every day at the end
They
of
do it
class.
a lot, and it has to do with student engagement. That's
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
So I think that because we've made such a commitment to that already, we should probably support that more. So why I'll need to do more work to understand it. but it'd be good. That's just engagement in class. Did you feel engaged today, basically?
Yeah.
I'm gonna at least put Rooster down.
I think there's two phases of this though. There's this year's catastrophic disengagement new paradigm. And then when we get back, sooner than later, I hope, but in my heart, I see it as next year. We had a thing, and maybe you guys remember what it was, and I'm embarrassed I do not remember what it was, but it was a thing where the teachers, particularly at the elementary schools, they were looking to say, the teachers know every kid's name, talks to them, and know something about them, right? But it strikes me from a measurable goal, I'd like to spend 50% of our effort, resources, time, energy, and talent on sort of that 30% at the bottom, the 30% of the kids who are the unengaged outsiders, right? When we have 700 or 800 kids that come in our, for example, the high school extracurricular and athletics facilities, you know, we need to invest in that and support that. I'm concerned about, what about the other 1,000 kids? What about 500 of those 1,000 kids that are not connected? And they're those third of the kids that are on the outside that, you know, don't sit with anybody at lunch and don't people know about them. And to me, that's spending half our money on a third of the most disengaged is kind of in some ways gets to equity, right? Those people who, for whatever reason, aren't under the tent, right? And they're not under the tent as they go through the grades, they get less and less even close to the tent. But to me, that's after we get through. I don't know, Jeremy, and what, you know, in many ways, I think Eric and George, you know, we need to find some best practices to think now, what are we doing? You know, I saw the grade letter and thank you. That was courageous conversation. What are we doing for the next 2 months? What are we doing the first couple of months of the next semester? I don't even know. I don't even know where to start, right? But I think we have a right now challenge that we may need to think really outside the box. And then we have sort of these goals when we get to whatever the new normal looks like, which is not this, you know, different ways. But I think we have an urgent crisis. We need to figure out how we reinvest. And you know, we've talked about not deficit spending. I'm not necessarily in favor of that. If there's $500,000 we can spend to say, if we did X, X, and X, we could circle around and catch that third of the kids that are outside the tent now. I would seriously support that. We need that kind of innovative, creative intervention, because I think we have 2 years. We have now, and then we have whatever, you know, stability comes later on. And I've been thinking about that while you all were talking is, you know, I don't know what we're doing the month of November, right? We're struggling now 2 months into school. What are we doing the last 6 weeks of the 8 weeks of the semester? So anyway, that's my happy thought.
Can I throw a term in MTSS, multi-tiered system support?
Yeah.
When we talk about student engagement, and what Bill just brought up is, what are we going to do to support those students who aren't getting it? In other words,
Don't feel part of the system.
correct. They're just, we're failing them, not on purpose, but the system is failing. And we've got to support them somehow. If I'm trying to see where this fits the best, but it seems like it could fit in student engagement if that's what, based on what kind of Bill just said. We've got to engage those students. I don't know, it's a little bit loose.
Yeah. I mean, I don't use a lot of education buzzwords. I feel like that is one, just because I don't work in education, so I don't know them. So I think that I tend to describe things in a different way. But I think that I mean, I feel like multi-tier systems of support is what I hear everyone talking about is the most important thing to do. And I think it's encompassed by several of our goals, probably.
Probably, yeah.
So I don't know if it falls under, I wouldn't want to limit it to one thing. It might even be something that goes under multiple places in different ways. But you know more about it than I do.
Bill brought up the issue of the B's and the F's. And that's true. We got to do something now, or Jeremy has to. It's not us to do it, right?
It's happening everywhere. You're right.
But tutoring would help. You know, can we set aside money for teachers that want to tutor? We've been talking about this in Calistoga. Do we offer a tutoring program at night where the teacher can volunteer, not volunteer, but get paid? Or do you offer a Saturday program? But the issues that we're facing here are other districts as well. And that would be a way of doing intervention and helping some of these kids. They all wouldn't sign up for tutoring, but if you offered it, you could reach more kids, but you'd have to pay the staff and it costs money for the district. So tutoring is something that we've looked at over there to try to help kids K-12. And they're struggling with it because they don't know if they're going to offer it on a Saturday or an evening, who's going to sign up. The teachers have families, you know.
Teachers are already overwhelmed.
They're already overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Distance learning, they're dying on the line because it's really hard. But if we don't do anything for the D's and F kids right now, come December, it's not going to look good.
I have two thoughts. One is that I'm not sure all the DNF kids are really DNF kids. And we have a lot more than last year who are getting DNF, so we know there's suddenly a larger percentage of our state population who are earning DNF. And there are a lot of issues, just being a parent of younger kids, they're not used to managing all of these assignments. So they don't always see them, or they act like they don't see them, and they don't realize that they're getting graded on not completing a bunch of different things. And then sometimes they're trying to turn something in and it's not, either they're saying it's not loading or it's not. So I think there were a lot of kids who tried to push the limits of what they could do. But everything's graded in Google Classroom, so you get a number. And it's very clear what your number is. And I think teachers just gave the grade that was the number. And so I kind of think we need some flexibility. And I didn't totally see that in the letter that went out, like a guarantee of flexibility. But
and I will tell you, I knew you were happy. We weren't ready to say that yet, because we still haven't had the conversation with all that.
Right. I figured, but I feel like some of the kids just need time to finish their work, and it would be awesome if that were counted once they got it done. Because teachers right now have the discretion to say, nope, it was late, 0. And then the other part of it is some students probably need some of that work excused because they're never going to be able to do it.
Yeah, that's a union issue. You can't tell teachers how to grade. That's sacred. So some teachers will be flexible and say, yeah, I'll cut you a break. Other teachers might say, no, I assigned it, you can do it. Great.
Okay, let me go back.
So that's really hard. We can kind of rebuild this. We're already up to 7.
No. This is important. Okay, Jordan. To your point, give each student an avenue to reach their potential, right? And I put in there, get over, under, around the hurdles. Why can't we tell teachers, hey, this sucks right now, be more flexible?
They have to agree.
They have to
You
agree to be
can
more
tell them,
flexible.
but they can say no.
Here's the thing, we're having these conversations. Teachers know, teachers are grounding. This is hard, right? So we know that teachers are working harder than ever. And we also know that our student outcomes are not where we want them, or where teachers want them. And so we have to change something. And we got to look at grading practices. We got to look at our structural scheduling. We got to look at just the way that we are doing instruction online, because are we engaging students? Or in some instances, we're doing the lecture in person, but then we're asking the work to be done on their own. Well, should we flip that and do the work with the students, and then the lecture can be watched before? I mean, there's a lot of different things that we've got to discuss. And that's why when we talked about flexibility, Stephanie, the high school hasn't had the conversation yet. Middle school has, right? Callie started the conversation. So I know that that's part of the conversation. It's just, we're just not there yet. But for this specifically, when we're talking student engagement, I think what you just said, Rich, was a really good way to pull it back. You talked about maximizing potential and everybody. Well, the only way to do that is for every kid to have a plan. What MTSS is for basically you take a kid and you bring them through the system and they get to a certain spot and they drop. You say, okay, what's my support for that kid? This is the support I offered. Okay, I brought them back up to grade level. Okay, they still didn't give it, they still dropped, then I offer a different support until I can get them back up. So it's like a personalized plan for every single kid. You have a support for every single type of learner so that you can maximize that kid's potential, because they all have a different potential, right? That's what MTSS is. So actually it was a really good kind of segue into what we're talking about, I think.
But a lot of management and a lot of outreach.
Tons of work too,
And a lot of assessment.
and a lot of money.
I think in our district, people equate assessment with grading, and I think this would kind of require a whole new way of looking at what assessment means, if you just find out how to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm going to take the liberty of just putting MTSS on it, because I think that I can make it fit this conversation and what we've all just discussed. And on top of that, I'm not going to say that. So I'm going to move us to college and career. What's going to happen after this is I'm going to take a stab at remembering everything that we talked about, because I'm taking notes. And then to create these goals and to bring them back to you so that you can say, yes, that's what we meant, or no, that's not. And you can add things, take them away, whatever it might be. But I'd like to take us to college and career. And if you're thinking about this, we have a number of indicators. If you went back to here, a number of indicators on here that we could use for measuring college career readiness. What is our focus though? Are we going to focus on high school graduation? Are we going to focus on SAT scores? Probably not. You know, there's a lot of ways to measure. Are we going to focus on the number of students who completed you know, I mean,
The dashboard has all those indicators for us, a lot of them.
yes, absolutely.
I think high school graduation rate is a really good indicator.
Would that be something that the board focuses on?
Because if we're really offering this multi-phase system of support, we should be capturing each student and getting them where they need to be to graduate from either Windsor High School, Windsor Oak, or North Bay Med Academy.
What
So
about this?
we have a nice palette of options.
And our college and career may not, or the college and career indicator may not line up with our graduation standards and requirements. There's always issues there, and one group not agreeing with the other one, so that fits well.
Should I put it? Grad rate? Do we want to focus at all on state test scores?
I don't think this year we can worry about that at
Oh,
all,
no.
because it's not gonna happen.
Not this year.
Kick that one down the road a little bit, maybe.
It is a matrix that a lot of people use. It's
Great schools, right? Great schools on Zillow.
Real estate agents like that, yeah.
We don't really want
But-
prices to go any higher.
and other schools use it against us. Their kids,
Maybe you want to
go there for dinner.
You got it. Private schools often.
It's ironic because they don't have,
Right.
they don't publish chat.
I mean, I think it's something we have to, that is out there and we have to do.
And we've invested a lot in that. We have a number of coaches that are using, I mean, it has been an investment that we. So if we're talking about, we're putting our money where our mouth is, we're really working towards that right now. So. Anybody could fit.
That third grade literacy I mentioned earlier.
Grade literacy.
It's a big bonus for a lot of people.
I really like, I think Rich said it earlier about front loading some of the academic rigor. Did you say that? Yeah. I don't know that is something that is measured here, or that it's.
But it could be.
I'm just like, I could stay here for like 3 more hours.
No, it's what it is. It's a little acorn investment down here.
Yep.
And then people go, look at that big, beautiful oak tree. Oh my golly. But they didn't realize that thing,
To the water.
all the fertilizer and water and prep down here created that thing.
Well,
But
to
they're
Eric's
also
point.
preparing the student to face more and more rigor rather than kind of delaying the pain. You're saying like, no, and I feel like that is something that happens at Cali just by accident almost, because the kids are in a classroom where they're learning a new language when they're 5.
Right.
And if they go through this crazy experience, and then it's pretty rigorous, and I would like to see that for all of our students. Not that I want them to have a painful experience,
A struggle.
but I want to believe that from this very young age, we're just training them that you can handle this, that you can do this, and really investing.
And that's where you get that staff buy-in, because you gotta say, hey, folks, we may need, I'm just gonna throw it out, 20 to 1 at this lower level, 15 to 1 at this lower level, which means the yang is you might be able to get now away with 30 or whatever at this higher level, because they have the basics, so you don't have such a wide gap of student ability at these higher levels.
We reduce intervention teachers at the higher
The
level.
state tried to do that with algebra and with reading classes, intervention classes, and it blew up on them because they couldn't afford to fund it.
Right.
We could also put reclassification rates in there. We got a huge result on that. They did great with that. How many kids are stable by literacy when they graduate because of Cali and other programs? The AVID program is a great thing that got a lot of feathers in our cap. We just,
Sure.
what do we throw out there when we do a little media blast or when we do a letter,
Get our elevators.
letter home kind of thing?
So what you just said, it's not, okay, so to your point, third grade reading, the greatest indicator of success for our students, right? It's, if you can read at third grade, you're less likely to go to prison, but your level of finances go, I mean, is that something that we focus on because it hits what you just said, Rich? If we get every single person, 100% of our kids reading at grade level by third grade, that's a significant investment in water early. And then if they're ready in third grade, well, then we don't have a lot of the same interventions that we do, you know, catch kids up in middle school, high school. Is that an indicator that we put on here? A powerful one, it's commonly used, but I don't know if that's what we want to focus on.
Well, that's gonna be tied to preschool and all the other things that go along. You can't just start a kid in kindergarten that doesn't have any home support. That has never read a book at home with their
Kindergarten
parents.
readiness is real.
You might need 3 indicators, one for the elementary, one for the middle.
Yeah.
Well, you talked about early education,
Right.
so maybe we do offer some kind of preschool.
Call it kindergarten, your goal would be kindergarten readiness,
Kindergarten.
Yeah.
100% of students readiness.
They don't know their numbers and their colors and their letters and all
I'm with you. I think it's just what happens over time.
Really?
Oh my
I'm just gonna
goodness.
sit back on it.
I get it.
But I would invest more early. My daughter started kindergarten right after the kind of the worst year of the recession. The budget had just been cut down so low. And that was, I think there were no more aides in kindergarten when she started. And so my kids have had that experience and it's been rough on teachers, especially those young grades, like they're tired. And they don't feel supported professionally in some ways. So I would, not that that's really what we're talking about, but I think in terms of rigor at a young age, we do need resources.
In terms of, if you look at the kids as a stock, a bond. If you do,
Yeah.
well, if you invest early,
Yeah.
the time value of money growing on itself, you get a much better yield at the end. Whereas if you don't start investing until later, then you're having to do makeup and additional contributions to catch up to where you should have been.
Yeah, that's the analogy.
And at the
for
very
support
end, if
process.
you don't do it till the very end, hey, you're broke. So when we talk about investing in the young area, investing in the young area means that we're actually putting in more than we otherwise would be standardly putting in, if that makes sense. Just trying to draw that analogy. So when people say, well, why are you doing it? And that, what does that mean? That means that our bargaining units as a group need to understand and agree that this is the type of thing that we're gonna do. We know that if we can do this investment and really pour the gas in down here, it'd be a whole lot smoother sailing up here. Just let the time value of money just do its thing at a lower interest rate to get a better yield, or by doing it that, not to put things in financial terms, but just to kind of get the concept across it. Early investment, real investment is where you'll get your best results.
So here's the one I'm hearing. So I think that what we do to get to the result, that's where our staff comes in, right? So we get with our teachers, our principals, our support staff, and we say, we need to do these things so that we hit this criteria that we've set as a board. In my mind, that criteria is third grade level, because it's such a key metric.
The millions of studies out there.
There's just so many, and if we talk about early investment, like you're saying, well, if we invest early, then that metric should thrive. The other key metric that we often have in education is 8th grade math level, because algebra is a gatekeeper for students. And so if you're ready to go into algebra in 9th grade and you actually have the basic skills, you're usually found to be much more. Now, this is a college thing more so than career, but for college, if you're ready to actually get algebra at 9th grade, you're in good shape.
One of the problems with that, I totally agree. I'm on board with everything you said, but one of the problems with that is that you don't see the results with graduation rates and all the other stuff for 8, 5, 10 years down the line. Just like the visual performing arts program, we got that 1.7 million. It was TK to 5, mostly 2.
Right.
And we're not going to see the results of that in the high school band and the arts and all the dance and all that for many years. Are those kids going to stay involved in that? We love that program came in, but when's it going to bear fruit? And so that's the hard part about setting these goals, is that it's so far away, you don't get to always see it right away. You want to take your bang for the buck a lot of times.
What if
People
we
don't
get
always
away?
buy into that.
What if we get away from SBAC? And we talked about iReady, because it's something that we've also invested in, and it shows the percentage of students on track at grade level. And then you can actually track every year, are we getting better? Are we getting worse? That's improving. And I'm not sure what the metrics would necessarily be, but do we want to focus instead just on number of students on track, grade level?
So Jeremy, that was way down in the weeds watching here from Zoom land.
Sorry.
No, that's cool, but I think looking at, and I'm just staring at the LCFF evaluation rubrics on half my screen here, and I really like, again, an Ahmadianism, ready for life at 18, right? And so part of what we're talking about at grade level at third grade or algebra at 9 is a continuum of articulated instruction in the district, right? When I got on the board and Eric got on, we had 3 different math programs as people went from school. They went Houghton Mifflin to the other one, and we wondered why Johnny couldn't count when he got to 9th grade, because he had 3 different kinds of math about how to do a word problem. So I think integrated curriculum and having these life skills for ready for life at 18. And, I don't think they're soft skills. I think they're the most important skills people can have to communicate and be empathic and be reliable. But these curriculum pieces, and I think the career and college readiness, the life readiness, includes these people who need English language, redesignation or help, who need the math intervention. Our special education students, we don't really talk about. We have these students, they have a different ready for life or a different career, but they're at least as valuable. I remember looking over at Eric when we were seeing our friends down in Santa Rosa, and they said, we're going to go A through G. And we were like at a third. And I remember you said, Eric, and I just was stunned until it came home to me. Oh yeah, you'll never really get above 50% A through G because, it just doesn't work. And that's not the demographic that we have. Not that our kids can't all excel, but there's other routes that we can do here. We have the University of California at Santa Rosa that people can go to, right? At least used to. One of the things we started to do, Jeremy, and you may not know, we never, when I got on the board, I said, we're ready for life at 18, or at least they're gone when they're 18, right? That June, most of them. We graduate the vast majority of them, and they're out the door. We never tracked what happened to them. We never asked them to say, are you ready for life at 18? Have we put in good culturally time? Did you who were, maybe somebody peaked at 17 and by 21, she's, can't be at 4-year school anymore. And somebody who was struggling at 18 is doing brilliantly at 25. And I think there are ways, certainly through Naviance, we can do it through their academic pursuits. But I think, again, it's a sort of thing, maybe the Rotary, the Chamber, it's not exactly academic money. I'd really like us to follow up at, 3-5 years with our graduates and ask them how they're doing. Did we give you this ready for life experience? If we did, great. Did you blossom later? If we didn't, please come back and help us. We do not have an alumni program, right? We have one of our stalwart alumni there and her husband who's there. We don't have an alumni program at our high school. And I think until we do that and pull people back in, we are selling ourselves short because it's like, okay, you get to the end of the plank at 18, goodbye, right? And so I think there are ways we can do that better and pull this metric in. But I think building towards success when people are out the door at the end of grade 12 and all the pieces that go to that, all the academic measurements and all these other things, which I think in some way keep them engaged. But I don't know that we ask or even know what's the success rate of our graduates, whatever that means. I don't even know how we define that. We don't know that, as far as I know, because we don't ask. And I think that's a valuable piece on the other side, because I think it would inform us, because some of these metrics in the cute color-coded 25 block graph, that's fine. That might not be, that may deliver something. It may not. I don't think that we know though. So.
If you do a continuum, I think what you're saying is let's do a continuum. That's what I'm hearing. We did something with kindergarten, and then another third, another 8, another graduation, and another beyond. If we're trying to figure out if we're being successful the whole way through, then we can have metrics at every level. It's our checkpoints, right? These are our checkpoints to make sure we're getting to that 25-year-old, and then we'll find out how we did. So what do you guys think about that concept? And then we do some of the kindergarten readiness. I third grade just makes sense because it's such a normal one. 8th grade is another big transition for kids. Whatever that metric is, I don't know, but it's, are we on track to go into high school? And then graduation rate is kind of a common one that we could use. And then
It makes sense.
it makes sense, right? So
Maybe
maybe I'll
you're not valuing a certain grade band.
Yeah.
Yeah, we want to know the
We
whole
want to evaluate
student.
all the
The
teachers.
11th grade SBAC is ridiculous. Kids aren't even taking math that year, half of them. They haven't had full years of science yet, and they're testing them on those things. It's not a good indicator that the state has it pushed on their end, so.
Yeah, and it is a long time to wait for it to come to fruition, but I think that's also kind of exciting about it. Or
Mhm.
something that is exciting about, actually, let's really think 15 years down the road, where do we want to be as a district and what do we want student success to look like for the kids that are starting TK this year in this crazy time or next year.
And if we can share a metric of third grade readiness for literacy,
Whatever it is.
when we put out news, you know,
Yeah.
we might get some of the kids back that are leaving, you know, they're going other places, or we might have an influx, you never know.
Well, what I'm thinking is if we really establish these, you know what, we have meetings as a board where we're reviewing how are we doing. Right, this is what we're focused on, and we need to have those conversations to make sure we.
Then on the alumni part, another idea I just thought of was maybe 6 months after graduation, the school can send out a card, hey, you graduated, send us your emails, you know, we'd like to connect with you. Then that way, maybe you have the alumni association, so the booster, somebody would gather that information, and that way they could build it, because if you don't catch these kids within 6 months to a year after they graduate, they become disconnected with their high school.
Right.
My
Well-
own son, want to go back, and we live like 2 blocks away. You know, he's too embarrassed, I don't want to go back. But we want our kids to be connected to their high school, they can come back and talk to the kids, and maybe that could be something you can work at the high school where they send out a postcard, a mass postcard or something, 6 months.
Social media is gonna be a great outlet for
Yeah.
that.
Or yeah, Facebook page for,
Yeah, it's gonna be Instagram or something like that.
but that's a way to connect. But you have to be intentional, because we've been saying since Bill brought it up, what are we gonna do with our alumni? And you kind of kick it around when they're doing it.
Okay.
So that could be a goal, or that could be,
Now that you're out in the real world for a little while, how do you feel about how things went for you in high school? Or
We could have a
for
survey.
your whole career?
survey, you don't have to put your name on it.
Yeah.
What did you think of your, you know?
And they're either gonna be complimentary or they're gonna be putting us down, but we need to know that, one way or the other.
Better to know.
Absolutely.
But I think getting their contact information before they graduate, or
Nothing
when
else,
you
just,
still have them in your
yeah,
control.
sending something to their family address even, we still have that on file.
6 months out, you know, like that December,
But
it's somebody's job.
two things that I want to bring in from my other board role, which is on the We Foundation, is we're working on actually building an alumni network through our social
Oh,
media.
that's fantastic.
Oh, you
So
are?
that's
Okay.
something that our board
And that could
really
be a
feels,
partnership.
and we want to build our social media, and that's the way they decided to do it, was through alumni engagement and building a database, so that's
Very
a good
cool.
starting point.
Yeah,
And the
that's
second
good.
thing is they're very interested in hearing from you for committee members, and they're really interested in doing a mentoring program to support the kind of the struggling students during distance learning, but we're working that out in a way where it could actually be engaging more. It's challenging right now. So,
Yeah, And there's so many hoops to jump through on volunteerism, and
Right.
it's not easy.
but the We
So we could work.
Foundation would be willing to cover the cost of background checks
Oh,
and
there you
fingerprinting,
go.
and potentially stipends to tutors. So.
Very cool.
So as a measurable goal, given the chaos of year 2021, I was thinking to put on there to say, hey, homecoming is in the fall. Let's do something for homecoming, to drive something home, to reach out to alumni. I think if God smiles on us and we're able to get back in schools, maybe we do something by the middle of May. We do something like as a spring celebration, we're back, and we just start to reach out, because we've talked about it and doing databases and whatnot. But I'm just struck, because I think out of our core structure, if we started to reach out again out of the community, this is sort of community relations in a way, it's a continuum. People are hungry to come back and connect and help, but we don't even ask them. Right? It's a vacuum, and I think given this weird situation, if we could have facilities that would be open, you know, as spring rolls and school year, which was not really school year, wraps up, maybe we do a fledgling thing in the spring, and then have as a metric to say, we'd like to do this, and we just figure out, all right, what's our definition of success? But we actually do something more concrete within the next year.
Trustee Ahmad in her cheer outfit, is that what you're talking about?
I've seen her do that Supergirl thing on the stage. Oh, we're getting tired now.
How long are we gonna go? I'm okay.
We only get word to do the same thing, just the next two goals. I'm not gonna do the indicator of success with
I
timeline.
think we originally said 7. I'm okay to stay, but I don't want to ask anybody else to.
I gotta go.
Yeah.
So, I thought we were.
It's 7:30, so that 7:30 was kind of our time.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
either way.
So it's whatever you guys would like to do.
We can just bring it up again, or he could just give us the report.
Want me to play with it? And then we can do this via email
I
too.
think we've talked about a lot.
We've
I
gone
mean,
through a
you
lot.
Yeah.
are the superintendent and probably have some ideas about how you guys are going to be,
Yeah.
so I'm not supposed to you kind of taking it from here. But
And we're gonna approve these in an open session. We'll probably do 2 touch this. So
Yeah.
bring it, discuss what we come up with, and then bring it back to final. I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Do you imagine you could make bullet points of the 3 we've talked about and maybe flesh out some of the other comments that we did on personnel and community relations, and we can sort of take this up again on Tuesday?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Yes, can. Absolutely can. So, yeah, I'll take this on. That's what I was planning to
So
do.
being that it's Thursday, will we have some of this for Tuesday's board meeting? Would
You know, probably
tomorrow?
not.
Probably not next meeting,
But,
5 days or whatever it is.
but I can still get it to you guys to see.
Yeah.
Okay, so it'll take me a couple days. Obviously, but
We only meet once in November.
Yeah.
So that'll be the first reading, and then we'll talk about it again in December.
But board goals, usually you want them to last longer than just a year. I mean, usually good focus. So I think that we're really gonna take the time, do it right, and then make sure we're gonna invest, because we're gonna invest in June, really.
Yeah. So Jeremy, I apologize for not being there, although it's been fun to listen and watch you guys. Has this been helpful for you as the new member of the governance team?
Oh, yeah.
Get to know us a little better. And
100%. Anytime I get to do these things, that's kind of one of the reasons I fashioned it this way. I really wanted to hear everything from you guys and to know what your values were and really flesh it out. It helps me lead, right? It helps me know where our focus needs to be and how to guide. So, yeah, very helpful, Bill, actually. So, I think we're good. Ready?
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Motion by trustee Carnation. And George, you want the second motion? Second. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye. Ready to adjourn, Bill?
Yep.
Okay, thumbs up, there we go.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you on Tuesday. Good night.
How do I end
That was-
All right, you showed me. I do this.
Okay, so Tuesday, we're back on Zoom, right?
you guys should close the Zoom.
Oh, no. I don't know.
It wasn't the Zoom, I don't think, it was
I don't know.
the Dr.
There's
Share.
us.
Go down to the bottom where it says end.